Hello everyone, and welcome to this short session on how we've been using student performance data to guide revisions to materials that I use in teaching financial accounting. In the past, there were only two ways for authors to see how students were experiencing the course materials. One approach was to conduct focus groups, and these were extremely useful because we could get a group of students in a room and talk about some of the main features of a book, what was working for the students, what wasn't, and ideas that students would like to see incorporated into future revisions of the materials. One of the problems, though, with a focus group is that the students voluntarily participate, so there's a potential for a self-selection bias that limits the generality of their experiences. A second way that we've used in the past to understand how students experience course materials is for the authors themselves to teach using their materials. This also is super useful because it gives you very, very deep and rich insight into how students are using those resources. But again, it's limited by questions of generalizability. Are the author's students similar to your own students? Fortunately, we now have a third way. We have data from Learnsmart that shows how well students have performed on questions that are directly related to course material. In my case, we have data from approximately 2.4 million responses that students have entered in when responding to Learnsmart probes developed for the 4th edition of my textbook. Because each probe in Learnsmart is tagged to specific content in my book, we're able to map the student performance data to each learning object in the book, producing what we call a heat map. The heat map highlights segments of the book in green, yellow, and red to indicate how well students have comprehended those segments of material. Now, you can probably imagine several different reasons for why students might not be performing at the level that we'd like them to. One is they might be trying to answer the question too fast without thinking it through. Another possible explanation is it's just a hard topic, and they haven't previously mastered earlier material, and so they find this new material particularly challenging. A third possibility is that perhaps the question is worded in a way that is unclear to the students. Or lastly, and the one that I'll start with, is that perhaps the material in the text isn't as clear as it could be. By knowing how well students have comprehended individual segments of the 4th edition of my book, I've been able to direct my 5th edition revisions to helping students better comprehend material that had been challenging back in the 4th edition. Let me show you a few examples of how this has been executed in the creation of the 5th edition. Here's a segment of the heat map from Chapter 1, which discusses the conceptual framework for financial reporting. As you can see by the green shaded text, students had no difficulty comprehending the main objective for general purpose financial reporting. But the orange sentence indicates that they did not as clearly identify the fundamental qualitative characteristics of relevance and faithful representation. And the red segments show they were even less able to identify the enhancing qualitative characteristics. So in the 5th edition, I revised the exhibit and I rewrote the related segment of text to briefly elaborate on the fundamental and enhancing characteristics. Here's the new exhibit, which transforms what admittedly was a fairly text-based exhibit now into a picture that shows that useful information has the underlying characteristics of relevance and faithful representation, and that those fundamental characteristics are enhanced through timely, verifiable, comparable, and understandable features of the information. Let's see another example, this time from Chapter 3. The student performance data showed what I would call middle-of-the-road performance, 60 to 70% accuracy on questions related to the timing of revenue reporting versus the timing in which cash is received. Although the heat map wasn't red, which would indicate the lowest level of performance, I felt like this topic is so important that it warranted improvement. So in the 5th edition, I've presented a new exhibit that better depicts the financial effects involving the 3 cases. Case 1, when cash is received before services are given. Case 2, when cash is received in the same period that services are given. And Case 3, where services are given in a period before cash is received. Notice that students can look at this exhibit and glance down the middle column and see that revenue is reported when the service is given, not necessarily when the cash is received. In some other cases, the heat map was pretty clear as to what needed to be done. This example from Chapter 11, I think, is pretty obvious, that this page of full text was overwhelming for the students, and that they would benefit from revised formatting of that text. So what I've done in the 5th edition is I've cleaned up the formatting, where I present the main point, I explain it succinctly, and then I give a real-world example. Now, not all solutions involve rewriting or re-illustrating the main ideas. Some, such as this one from Chapter 9, which relates to the disposal of property, plant, and equipment, already appears to be presented in a pretty clear manner. You can see there's 2 bullets and it's pretty short text after each. In cases such as these, where perhaps it's just the difficult nature of the ideas themselves, what we've done is develop new video resources that are embedded in Smartbook. In this particular instance, I created a whiteboard video to illustrate the steps involved in accounting for disposals. Let me play a small piece, maybe a half a minute of this 2.5-minute video, so you can get a feel for how the ideas are presented step by step for students.
The disposal of tangible assets simply means that a company has sold a fixed asset, such as a building, vehicle, or as shown here, piece of equipment. In return, the company gets what we call the disposal proceeds, which usually is in the form of cash. To account for a disposal, the company must first update depreciation to the date of disposal. That often involves calculating depreciation for a partial year, which we explain in a different video. The second step is to account for the exchange of the fixed asset for.
Not all the videos we've developed are in this whiteboard format because I felt students might tire of it after a while. So for variety, we've also developed videos in a Khan Academy style on a blank screen, where the problem is solved or the ideas are presented just as you would in your office while you're explaining an idea to students. Other videos are created in an animated PowerPoint format. This latter format is one of my favorites because what it's allowed me to do is create a step-by-step explanation of each of the key exhibits in the book. This way students can see the exhibit as it's being built, and they can hear me walk them through some of the key points that are embedded in that exhibit. And ultimately, it ends with the final picture that's displayed in the exhibit that's presented in the book. We use these videos in a couple of different ways. Some are embedded into the exhibits in Smartbook, right in the body of the chapter, whereas others are offered as remediating explanations when students are unable to correctly answer Learnsmart probes. Now, in addition to using the heat maps to guide revisions to the text and its illustrations and to guide the development of videos, I've also used the heat map data to direct my review of the question probes within Learnsmart. Sometimes students might struggle to answer a question not because they didn't understand the material, but perhaps because they didn't understand the wording of the question. By knowing that students struggled with a particular question, I have been able to critically evaluate every question within Learnsmart and challenge how it's been written and, where appropriate, to revise it, as you see here on the screen. And I've done this for all the chapters of the 5th edition Learnsmart probes, so I'm confident that the probes are expressed in a manner that connects with the textbook. Of course, you also remain an important source of information to guide my revisions. It was your advice that led me to reorganize chapters 5, 6, and 7 in the 5th edition to ensure better linkages and continuity among topics. Here are before and after screenshots of a whiteboard video that I've created to describe these changes in detail. If you'd like a link to that video, please email Kyle after this session is over when I'll present the email address to you. Other changes I've made in the 5th edition based on instructor feedback are to reformat the accounting equation analysis to remind students that changes in income statement accounts influence stockholders' equity in the balance sheet. You see that in the little call-out bubble that's connected to the accounting equation. Also, instructor feedback has led me to remove the DR and CR prefixes from each line of a journal entry, and instead display the more traditional debit and credit column headings at the top of the journal entry to the right. In the 5th edition, we've also streamlined the chart of accounts so that, for example, different types of service revenue are represented by a single account called service revenue. Instructors also told me that they wanted more technology companies that appeal to their students, so I've made a real effort to integrate them throughout the book. Here's an example where I contrast the new focus company in Chapter 3, which is an app development company, with familiar companies like Electronic Arts, Facebook, and LinkedIn. I also have added more comprehensive problems so that the students can keep their memory of earlier chapters fresh when working on new chapters, particularly later in the book. And finally, the 5th edition now allows you to assign Excel simulations and general ledger problems that are representative of the skills students will need in the workplace. These Excel simulations help students to learn what types of formulas to enter into Excel spreadsheets to do computations or to link one worksheet to another. And the general ledger problems allow students to enter journal entries, but then skip the mundane task of posting those to T accounts and then summarizing ending balances in a trial balance and then copying those ending balances into the financial statements. Those more mundane steps using the GL tool are done automatically for students. Well, we're nearing the end of time here, so I just want to close by saying how much I value your continued feedback and advice on how to make the fundamentals of financial accounting an even better set of learning resources for your students. So please feel free to email me, Fred Phillips, directly at the email address shown here on the screen. Also, here's Kyle Burdett's email address in the event you would like him to help you with any questions related to our materials, or if you'd like to see the video that reviews the 5th edition revisions in detail. Thank you for your time and have a great day.